Hi, thanks for tuning in to the Courage Collective. This is Nikki, your host, and you are sure to hear from an amazing entrepreneur with an incredible story. So stay tuned. You will not want to miss this. Welcome back, Courage Collective listeners. So grateful to have you here with us today. And we have Mr. David Somerfleck with us, and he is the founder of DMS.Blue. And we will find out a lot more about that as he shares his story with us. Thank you so much for joining us, David. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Nikki. Thank you for anybody watching or listening. I appreciate your time, and I hope I can deliver some good quality information for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So share your story with us. Tell us what DMS.Blue is. Tell us a little bit about you. We would love to learn.
Sure. Well, basically, DMS.Blue is me in a nutshell. After working for marketing and advertising agencies for well over 20 years, I stopped counting after 20. I basically, in between working at marketing agencies, I would briefly work as a freelancer or independent contractor. So after about 20 years of working for different marketing and ad agencies, and during that time I did other things. I was a political marketing consultant, which they call messaging. So I was trained by the White House Project to advise progressive political candidates. I also had a nonprofit organization that I ran briefly. And I also had my own small marketing agency that I also ran for a few years. So this is while I was working for different marketing and ad agencies for 20 plus years. So about 3 years ago, I moved to Florida to be closer to my father, who is in his mid 80s now. And, when I moved to Florida, I just decided it was time to scale back, So I still work with clients, but I'm also very selective about who I work for, knock on wood, thank God every day I don't have to go out and do a lot of the face-to-face meetings that I used to do when I was more active. I used to teach seminars and workshops and all-day boot camps very regularly. So now I guess you could say I'm semi-retired, but I still, keep active and I still work with clients selectively. And that's basically where I'm at. So I provide digital marketing services. I consider myself to be a very experienced digital marketing specialist, and my initials are DMS. So I just thought, what's the easiest way to do this and to scale down is to say, I'm one person. I always have been, of course, but now more so than ever. So DMS.Blue explains what I do, who I am, and it just happened to be my favorite color that, I've always worn. I was always a kind of a poor dresser when it came to doing all these seminars and all-day boot camps. And when I was teaching, college journalism, college English, and speaking to groups, I never really knew what to wear. So one day my wife just said, look, just pick your favorite color and just wear that all the time. I'm like, that's brilliant.
That is brilliant.
That's why she's my wife. She's brilliant. But it's also marketing and branding.
Yeah, I think that's it right there. The marketing and branding piece is so perfect.
People talk a lot about authenticity, but what does it really mean? How do you really speak from a place of authenticity? And part of it is knowing who you are, what you are. How do I differentiate myself from other competitors or marketing agencies, for example? Well, you could say I don't, or I'm unique, or there is no competition. I've heard people say that a lot, but they just don't know. So, how I differentiate myself is by being as close to the bone, so to speak, as I possibly can, being
Mm.
as honest as I can with other people, but also with myself, who I don't want to work with, who I do want to work with, what I need in my personal life or in my professional life, what I need, what I don't need, what I want, what I don't want. And in a lot of cases, it's hard for people to articulate, or you don't want to face it, and everything that you do personally and professionally, because one feeds the other. And,
Yeah.
I had to face that when I was, when I decided to move to Florida to be closer to my dad. It's very different in Southwest Florida than it is in Denver, Colorado. In Denver, Colorado, I could pay the mortgage in one day by giving a WordPress boot camp as just one example. I was teaching college journalism at night. I had so many things going on, I couldn't even keep track of them at one point. Whereas here, that's not going to work.
Mm.
It's completely, totally different. There are more struggling small businesses, but the interest in digital marketing is flatlined. There's no
Yeah.
interest at all. So you have to recognize that. So I'm strictly remote.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, but it's being authentic is very important to me in business and professionally.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good word for a lot of entrepreneurs that are listening, and something that I even, take to heart for myself. I think a lot of times we think that if people reach out to us, or if this is something that will help them, that it's good for us. And sometimes we really do have to take a step back and say, who am I going to work with? What are my boundaries? What are my set things that I have in place that are going to be healthy for me, for my family, for my business?
Right. There was a very powerful scene I remember seeing in a movie called The Last Temptation of Christ. I think it was a Martin Scorsese film. And it's supposed to be based on a book. And I don't know if the book is based on actual gospel. I don't know. I'm not a biblical scholar. But there's a very powerful scene in the movie where Jesus says to Judas, all the people are reaching for him, and they all say, well,
Mm-hmm.
Jesus, my son lost an eye in an accident, can you heal him? My grandmother has a bad heart, can you heal her? They all want a piece of him, literally and figuratively. And
Mm-hmm.
Jesus says to Judas, get me out of here. I can't heal every single person immediately. Even I can't do that. Get me out of here. This is overwhelming. It's too much. I can't do it. you
Mm-hmm.
know and so he's like, okay, kind of, come with me. I'll show you how to, we'll take this road or whatever. And, we'll escape this and plan, for how we're going to really do this
Mm-hmm.
more methodically. So, I mean, one of the things that I did during all these 20 plus years was I was a certified small business mentor for the US Small Business Administration. And I must have consulted with hundreds of business owners and nonprofit founders. And after all that time, I had to realize that you may want to help everyone. You may be able to help everyone, actually, but 99.9% of them are going to have issues that will prevent you from being able to help them, whether it's what I call the savior complex, where they want to do everything by themselves for themselves, the price shopping complex, where they're confused about what is price, what is cost and value and ROI. They have these concepts mixed up in their mind. So everything has to be super cheap or free or DIY. And then
Mm-hmm.
6 months or 6 years later, they wonder, why is my business not growing?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so I had to identify all these different types, and so that I could be clear with myself. If you match up with one of these types, I can wish you well. There's no hard feelings, but we're not going to be a good fit for each other just strictly on the basis of time management. I don't have 6 months to try to teach you why you should care about your business or why you
Yep.
should invest 3,000 so you can make 30,000. It's very common, extremely
Mm-hmm.
common. And I see it every day on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, Why is my free site not generating any leads? Well, you know,
Yeah.
it's you're using a DIY tool. You're not working with a professional. You're productizing or commoditizing what is meant to be a process.
Right.
It's
Right.
like me saying, it's like me going to a dietitian and saying, look, I found a diet on YouTube, but I didn't lose the 30 pounds I wanted to. What's happening? The dietitian would tell you, well, you're watching a random person on YouTube. You're getting what you paid for. We don't know anything about this person. You need an experienced professional to guide you. Plus, your
Sure.
situation is going to be different than John Q. Public or Susie Smith or whatever. Everybody's
Right. Right.
situation is different. So the one size fits all equation doesn't work for everybody, but we all wish
Mm.
it would. We all wanted everything to be Burger King too, I think, where it's your way,
Mhm.
you get it your way and it only costs you $5. Well, that's great, but it
Right.
doesn't work like that.
Right. Not in reality, not in the reality of our lives. Yes, at Burger King, yes, at in
There are
small
no
business and
shortcuts.
things. Yeah, there are no shortcuts. Exactly right. And that's really a good word for a lot of us to listen to and really kind of take to heart as an entrepreneur, the
Right.
investment piece of it.
Yeah, I know I'm digressing, but there's a quote that I like very much from John Taffer, who is a bar rescue, very popular TV show,
Hmm.
and I don't subscribe to his approach, where you just yell at people and you have this experience and this background, but I'm not like that. Um, but I like a quote that he said very much that until you own your failures, you cannot own your success. And it doesn't matter if it's business or it could be dating, it could be whatever it is that you're
Sure.
doing. You
Sure.
have to own your failure. And
Hmm.
the businesses that are ready to scale for accelerated growth and that will make it are the ones that can own their failure and admit to it. Yes, I tried to do something, it didn't work. It was a bad idea. What can I learn from it? I had a nonprofit that lasted 2 years. Yeah, 2 years. I got audited each year. Um, I broke even, which
Hmm.
but it was extremely stressful. It was a horrible idea for a really horrible market that wasn't going to be receptive to it. Once I could own up on that and say, David, look, you didn't apply the same rules that you applied to other people. Until you accept that, you're not going to really be able to learn from it.
Mm.
So I had to acknowledge that I had what I call the Hamlet complex, where it's like you can't really see what's going on around you in the rest of the world because you're acting out this your own drama, So I believed in this nonprofit. I thought it was a very noble, worthy cause that would help people uh, who were struggling through different legal issues. I never was a lawyer, but to be a mediator, you don't need to be. It helps, but you don't need to be. I had a lot of
Hmm.
training in mediation. So it was this a mediation nonprofit organization I started. So I had so many things going on. I didn't have the full time to dedicate to it. It was a bad idea, but you learn from it. And then I was able
Hmm.
to say, I can't be a coach or a mentor to myself because I'm too much in it. I can help other people, but it's very difficult to look at it at yourself objectively and be able to see what you're doing. You know,
Yeah.
uh, I write content all the time, but I'll go back and reread it. And if I read it from the perspective of the reader, or as if I were going to read it aloud, like on a podcast, I notice all kinds of spelling errors.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to see yourself when you're still within that frame, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think those are so many good things that you just shared with us. And one of the questions that I was going to ask you is what is one of your favorite like quotes or things like that that help you continue on this entrepreneurial journey? But you did share a few of them, but if you have another one, I'd
Just
love to
well,
know.
I have two more that I really, really like very much. And it applies to more than just business, which is why I like them very much. One is by the late, great civil rights icon Malcolm X, who's often misunderstood and misquoted, but he had a very powerful quote. Incredible, incredible man. But he said, if we do not stand for something, we may fall for anything. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
very, very true quote. And you see this going on now. We've seen it playing out for the last several years politically, with people going back and forth. What do I believe? What don't I believe? I don't know. I'm just going to go in all kinds of different directions.
Yeah.
And you see this with people starting businesses. I'm committed. No, I'm not. And back and forth. And another quote that I love very much is by the author Henry David Thoreau, who wrote Walden. And to me, Walden is a business book. But it's a very powerful quote that he said, build your castles in the air, for that is where they belong. Now lay your foundation beneath it.
Mm.
How many people jump into starting a business but have no business plan? They have no idea how they're going to get clients or referrals. They don't have it worked out in advance. And if
Yeah.
you have that in advance, it's amazing what a little deliberate organization can do for you.
Deliberate organization. That's
I mean, it seems
really
like a
good there.
no-brainer. It seems like a no-brainer. You would not leave the house and not have your keys in your hand, or not have your driver's license. So if I leave the house, I have a mask that, an N95 mask that hangs on the rearview mirror, because I know no one else will wear it. So I'm prepared.
Yep.
I
Yep.
always go. I have my driver's license, but people will go and they'll get a DIY template to bring it back to digital marketing, and then wonder why nobody's calling them. Well, what did you expect?
Yep.
Let's get real.
Yeah.
You get out what you put in.
That's right.
You can say it's a spiritual principle. You could say it's a moral principle, or just a business principle, but it's cause and effect. It's a very simple lesson, cause and effect. If I punch myself in the face, it's going to hurt. It's
Yeah.
cause and effect. But people will go and start a business with it and have no idea, how am I going to generate
Mhm.
leads? What do I do if nobody calls? It helps to think about these things before you start. And when
Yeah.
I work with clients, I really make them go through this with me. We start at the
Yeah.
beginning, because I assume that you haven't done the work.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I
Mm-hmm.
might be wrong, because Nikki might have done her homework, right?
Yep.
And that's
Right.
fine. You would tell me while we're having the screening and an onboarding conversations, but you assume that they haven't. And in most cases, people have. And it's not their fault, but
Yeah, because I think a lot
the
of
way it
times,
is.
yeah, a lot of times now it's kind of like if you can dream it, do it. And done is better than perfect and stuff like that, which is fine. But I think like you're saying, and I think as bringing value to the entrepreneurs listening, I think what David's saying is that it's extremely important to, jot that kind of stuff down. And if you need a mentor or coach or somebody
Yeah.
to help you walk through those steps, don't be afraid to invest in that business plan on the front part. Because like he said, very simply, you wouldn't leave your house without your keys if you had to get in your car to go somewhere. And it's very similar to your business. You have to have a plan in
And
order
here's,
to succeed.
yeah, and here's the thing. When you talk about business, usually people separate the personal from the business. And I don't know if I agree with that all the time, because when I was struggling in digital marketing, when I was in between marketing agencies, and like I said, knock on wood, thank God every day, everything's done, the house is paid for, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But to me, it was non-negotiable that we weren't going to be able to pay the rent or the mortgage, or that my wife and I wouldn't have enough food. That was non-negotiable. I wasn't willing to
Right.
gamble that. And yet I talk to people all the time who said, well, we never thought of that, or they don't want to talk about it. But wait a minute, it's a business, isn't it? If you're not getting enough
Yeah.
phone calls, if you're not getting enough phone calls and emails and enough customers coming into your restaurant or your store, or calling your accounting practice or your law practice or your yoga studio, if you're not getting enough people coming in one way or another, then it's serious.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Mm-hmm.
should look at it from a very serious perspective. If you're not getting a phone call or an email or 4 or 5 every day to your company website, how is that acceptable? Now, and I get it. Maybe a lot of people feel overwhelmed by technical jargon, or they're trying to DIY, savior complex. I've got to do everything myself by myself. I have no money. I don't really believe that, because again, if something is important to you, you can put it on your credit card, you can work out a payment plan. But I think it's a difference of seeing the business as a hobby or not being connected from it for some reason. But I've seen it so many times, hundreds and hundreds of times. I see it every day. So whenever I talk to people, I always hit on that. Is this something you're
Mm-hmm.
committed to that's meant to support a family? Or is this something where you're taking money from Peter to pay Paul, and you've got other things, and it's really
Yeah.
there's no skin in the game. If there's no skin in the game, I'm not the man for you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, that's great. I love how you're very clear on that, and you expect, your clients to be as well. And I think they learn that by being with you. And I think that's a good thing. I'd love to hear a little bit more about you, and maybe
Sure.
how you set your goals, like for yourself, for the week, for the month. What does that look like for you as you're in this space, maybe trying to gain customers and things like that? What are your goals, and how do you set your goals, really?
Well, my goals are very different today than they were 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So my goals now, number one is to be a good husband. That's number one. So, and I've always told my wife that if I'm doing something and you have a need, you come right away. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter what I'm doing. I'm not willing to put that on the line, under any
Mm-hmm.
circumstances. I've always told her that, but it's certainly more true now than ever before. But when I was working for marketing agencies, I always told her, if something doesn't feel right, I want you to tell me. If you don't like
Mm-hmm.
something, you tell me right away. But my goals have changed. That's number one. Uh, but I mean, as far as how I set goals, I'm very much a list builder. By heart, I'm a naturally disorganized person. I went to college with the goal of being a writer. I studied Shakespeare and Chaucer and Keats and Shelley and on and on and on. And of course, we all work internships in college. A lot of us do. So I had several internships in college working for newspapers and magazines and so on, as many as I could get because they would pay your way. And I learned very quickly during these internships that the pay for people who were writers and copywriters and editors was very low. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
compared to people working for marketing agencies, you could earn a livable wage. Now, they always hired their family members over people who were qualified first, but you could get your foot in the door back then. It's more competitive now than ever before. But
Mm-hmm.
but I learned that marketing agencies would pay a little bit more. So I immediately went to that, and I learned how to take the project manager's approach to being more organized with projects. So when I wasn't working for the agency, I was completely adrift. What do I do? How do I get
Mm-hmm.
organized? I don't have a taskmaster. I don't have, a boss, um, and so on. So I use the
Sure.
same tools and approaches that I did at the agencies. At agencies, they use list making services. Trello is very popular. I use one called Kanban Flow that I like very much, which is it's color coded listing cards basically.
Oh, wow.
So, and you can set it up so they have timers and they have deadlines, and people can collaborate if you want them to, and so on. So I'm a list maker. I have a list of books that I want to write. I have a list of people I need to get in touch with, and so on. I use Calendly for, all my appointments. I tell people, don't ask me if I'm available. I have no idea. Go to the link and just use the link. Why, for our conversation today, put it into my Calendly account as a separate event. So everything is on this one page.
Sure.
And, so lists are huge for me. Different people use different tools, different types of methodologies. But for anybody who feels goofy or awkward using lists, not at all. Put them
Yeah.
together, integrate them. And as far as work is concerned, I'm a big believer in processes, because when I was a independent contractor or solopreneur or freelancer, whatever you want to call them, when I worked as myself, just David, and I didn't have any processes, I would just deal with
Hmm.
whoever called or emailed me. Almost every time it would blow up in my face. I'd work with a nonprofit. They had an idea. I'd create the website. It would go live. They'd go to Google. They'd go to number one in Google. Then the next day they're calling me saying, delete the site. We're getting too many phone calls. So I had to learn how to apply the screening and onboarding methodologies that I learned from marketing agencies. I had to
Hmm.
learn from them how to do it. And once I applied those processes to my own life and how I work with others, everything just became so much easier. The
Yeah.
minute you deviate from that, because I see someone with a great cause or they're doing some kind of work that just touches my heart, like I'm a big animal fan. I love animals,
Hmm.
right? No, stay away. If you have an animal shelter and all of it, it's wonderful. My heart goes out to it. But I, I have to adhere to these processes. So let your brain guide you. Your heart can give you the support, but most of the time the brain is better at making the decisions. So I'd always look at them and say, I'd love to help you. I think your cause is great. What have you done so far? Do you have any staff? Do you have any paid staff at all? And if the answer is no, then I just say, well, we may not be a good fit for each other. What are your expectations? What do you consider realistic budget? What do you base it on? What are your goals?
Yeah.
But I think I digressed somewhere. So let you get back to your questions.
No, 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 no. That was really about setting goals. And I think it all circles back to really what you're saying. I mean, it's setting goals personally, but it's also setting goals like within your
Yeah.
organization and your business. And then also, like you said, looking at what other people are doing and seeing, does that really fit in with what I'm doing? I love how you said about Calendly, because that's me. People will ask to have meetings with me all day. And I
Yeah.
simply send them my Calendly link if I have the time to send that, and just basically say, this is like, I don't know until the next night or that night when I'm planning my day,
Right.
what my schedule is like, so it's easy to just have that quick link or some sort of link to say, well, this is my schedule, hop on when it's convenient for you, kind of put it in their court.
Right. Whatever your business is, the more rock solid and tested your process is, the easier life will be for you.
Yes.
I still find it very disheartening when people ask me, questions like, well, why should I invest in digital marketing? Well, it's 2021. Uh, but I still hear that question, does my business need a website? Now, my knee jerk answer is, what is it about money you don't like? I don't understand. I just don't get it. But you're willing to pay 500 a month to put an ad in the yellow pages, but no one will use them. You're willing to pay 5,000 a month to put an ad on the side of a bus, but no one can find you in Google, which is how many billions of people use Google every day.
Yeah.
Two billion people on Facebook all day long, every day. So, you know, but the more tested your process is, the happier you'll be, the easier your life will be. And so I had to implement a process several years ago where I put together a workbook, and I'm always adding more to it. Before I work with someone, I always give them this workbook and I say, please read over it, actually read it. And when we talk, I'm going to go over it with you to make sure that you read it. I want to know what questions you have about it. But I know it's going to answer every question they have, so that when we talk, we can actually talk about things that matter. Why are
Mm-hmm.
you doing what you're doing? What does failure
Mm,
look like for you? What has failure looked like for you in your business, in your life? What does that feel like? Because unless it's you felt it in a very raw, painful way, you ain't going to do anything about it. You
mm-hmm.
don't go you don't go get that root canal until it hurts so bad you can't see straight.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you, Nikki, I'm saying most people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, I know what you're saying. I
You know,
definitely can agree with that for sure. That's
yeah. But I had to learn a process to deal with these questions. How much, how much? What is this? What is SEO? How do I budget? How do I plan? On and on and on. So
that's really
first I
smart.
yeah, so first I started writing a book, but then I realized not everybody would go and buy the book. And then I thought, well, what can I do? I could make it more fun. So I wrote the book. Then I took the book and said, I'm going to make it really visual with cartoon characters and very bright infographic images. And so I sell that through my own website, and I give it to people who, go through an onboarding process with me, where it's much, much more visual, but it basically trains them. This is what digital marketing is. This is what it is not. This is how it works for real, established, profitable businesses. So you can learn by their example. You can do what they're doing.
Mm,
You don't need to be a millionaire. You just have to budget realistically and get organized and deliberate about what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it, and be realistic. If your goal is to be a business coach, well, we got to be realistic. There's how many millions of other business coaches out there? Quite a lot. So how are we going to
yep,
set you apart? How are we going to set you apart? How are we going to market you so you can attract people who need your services, want your services, and will pay you enough so that you can live on what you're earning and also cover any expenses so you can actually do it for real.
yep,
So
yep,
yeah, I had to realize, take the processes but that the larger corporate marketing agencies use and apply them to yourself, and then test them over and over again, so that if somebody is super cheap or they're broke or it's a hobby, they won't get past the velvet rope.
yep, yep. That's really, I mean, that's such a good word, and a lot of just real encouragement, I think, for the entrepreneur listening, just to kind of set
They
your,
have to do that.
yeah, set that for yourself and set your tone for what your business is going to be and what that looks like. And again, if you need help, we'll obviously link David's website as well, and maybe there's something there that you can glean from in the book and all of that, that there could be some real knowledge that you could take with you. I wanted to ask you one question, if you're willing to share with us. what
Sure, sure.
is what is like one of your biggest challenges you might be facing right now, and how are you overcoming that challenge?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, we're all going through challenges right now. And I think
Mm,
anybody who tells you they're not is lying. I really do. There are no magical gurus in the real world. They may say they are, but what they don't tell you is the decades that it took them to get from point A to point B. Everybody on
yes.
Shark Tank has been very public about saying how it took them decades before they were
Mm,
self-sufficient or very wealthy. I mean, Damon John sewed decals on T-shirts in his mother's kitchen. You know, Robert Herjavec said, he came from total poverty. They had a dirt floor. He worked at a company for free for years. Who can afford to do that? On and on. Kevin O'Leary had a business in his parents' basement. Well, how many years did he work there? I don't know. But so, everybody has struggles. They may not want to tell you, but they should be
yeah.
open about. So for me personally, I would say it's just, at this point, trying to get vaccinated just so I can have regular checkups and see my doctors and everything
Mm,
without worrying about, getting COVID and then what it might do to me if I were to get it or give it to my wife. Um, it'd be nice not to have to worry about that. But the
Yes.
reality is, if you're conscientious about that, you don't want to give it to other people. You don't want to get it or share it with your family members. Uh, then that's a struggle.
Absolutely. Mhm.
But every day, honestly, I wake up and I make lists. I look at my lists and I look at what I want to work on any given day. And I set aside specific days for interviews like these because I enjoy being interviewed. I want to reach people and try to help them if I can. But every day I make a new list, I revise lists. And right now it's writer's block. It's
Mm.
dealing with writer's block because if you study Shakespeare, Chaucer, Keats, and Shelley and Byron, and you love to read, you want to write something that's the best that it can be from you.
Yeah.
So I have to realize, well, look, not everything Shakespeare wrote was immediately a work of art. Shakespeare's first play was actually Titus Andronicus, and it was horrible. Try to watch it. It's got heads floating in soup and everything. It's just incredible. It's a mess. So everybody starts somewhere, and Stephen King took his first book and threw it in the trash can. His wife went and got it out, and that became Carrie. So I'm dealing with writer's block and trying to write a book now that basically takes my experiences working at all these different agencies, and many of them where I saw very abusive practices. I mean, I must have seen or been involved in at least 3 or 4 cases where there was sexual harassment going on and discrimination. And in almost every case, I was pulled into it because I was the guy who happened to be sitting the next cubicle down, but couldn't be quiet. I didn't bite my tongue. When the person was looking for someone who would support them, I was like, yeah, I heard so-and-so do that, or I saw so-and-so do this. Or, I saw the email chain with the inappropriate images. So yeah, okay, I did see that. I'll vouch for her.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
so we've I forgot what my point was, but we all have these issues going on. So I'm a big believer
Mhm.
in lists, and nothing is black and white. There's always gray, shades of gray to things. But ask me anything you want. I want to make sure that I really fully address your question.
Yeah, yeah, no, that was really your biggest challenge. And I think your biggest challenge was writer's block and how,
Right. Thank you. Yeah.
yes, and how you're overcoming that. So are you like blocking out time in your schedule to try to write, or are you keeping something close by where you can kind of speak into it and when you have a thought, or like how are you overcoming that?
Yeah. Well, what I'm doing is I'm trudging through it by just doing it and just saying, I don't know if
Mm,
this is going to be really great. I just can't tell you how good or bad it's going to be, but I'm just going to do it. And that's what I decided
I
to
like
try
that.
to take that weight off of you, to say, it might be a classic, it might be an utter piece of rubbish, but I'm just going to do it and hope that it will be good and that other people can benefit from it. I remember when I got my first review on the Amazon site for my
Hmm.
book, I was afraid to look at it because I was thinking, oh God, is this really going to suck? Um, and I looked at the review and I felt, oh, okay, I can relax. It was actually a very kind review. The person said he got a lot from it. So I was like, wow, this is great. I can't believe it. And here I felt so terrible. But I just found if you're conscientious, then the odds are it's going to be good. And also don't write something that's limited to a specific date or time.
Mm,
Because
yep.
I wrote one ebook about WordPress plugins, and then 2 or 3 years later it's outdated.
Got it. Oh, that's something very smart to take away. If somebody's thinking
Yeah.
about doing something like that, like it may not be a
Well,
great idea.
right. And for anybody who is into digital marketing or a business owner trying to get a grip on digital marketing, one of the things that I learned a long time ago was never talk tech. Never. Not ever, unless it's someone I work with. The reason for that is people get caught up in what I call the bright, shiny object syndrome, or the tool of the day, or the hack of the day. How can I fix my DIY website so it's number one in Google, or make it do something it's not meant to do or not supposed to do legally? A lot of people don't know that. A lot of these free DIY websites, you can't sell your services on them unless you pay the company, triple or quadruple what you would pay just working with a professional. There's all these strings attached. So I never talk tech, and I always tell people, don't fixate on tools. Fixate instead on setting smart goals that are practical, measurable, time bound, that are measurable, real goals, and then defining how we're going to go about implementing these. Then you look for someone who's experienced, who can help you achieve these goals. And you'd be amazed how much more traction you get, so much more easily. All of a sudden, things just open up because you're running your business, you're doing what you were called to do, and another person who was called to do their thing, they're freed up to do it.
Yeah, no, that's really great. I think my very last question was, what would you say to the listener today to encourage them? And I think you've given a lot of great encouragement thus far, which every interviewer that I've had has been incredible, with just really the knowledge and the wisdom that they bring. And you've been no different. So we appreciate that. But is there something that you could leave us with that might encourage the listener today, the entrepreneur today, that you would tell them?
Well, I would say that, like the Thoreau quote that I mentioned earlier, you really can build a profitable business, but it comes with this caveat that you got to know your unique selling proposition. That means your market. Does your market need it? Does your market perceive the need of it? Because if they need it and they don't think there's a need, then you're not doing anybody any favors. Is this something that you would do regardless, whether you made money at it or not? Would you still enjoy doing it? Are you really good at it? Do you have systems and processes in place to streamline what you do and productize what you do and make it easy to do it on a regular, recurring basis? So my message is, you can have a profitable business, but you got to put your ducks in a row. Do you have processes and procedures to make it easy? And have you thought through, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? How am I going to be different from everybody else in the crowd waving their hands saying, pay attention to me? If you think these things through, then you can act on them. And that's the big takeaway. So you can do it. You can do it, but recognize that it's going to be work. And, if you make a commitment and you dedicate yourself to it, and you're smart and you plan, nothing can stand in your way, but you've got to be committed and you've got to be realistic.
Wow. Committed and realistic. Two amazing words. Great encouragement for us today as entrepreneurs. Thank you so much for joining us on the Courage Collective, David. It's a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.